Finally done my Chibi Robo retrospective. Took me a month, but you know, really proud of that one. Well, mate, love the Chibi Robo video. That was some fantastic work right there.
What do you even mean? I just started rendering it. The video's not even out.
Yeah, mate. It was a great video. We loved it.
Look, man, I'm not even Australian. The government of Australia sent me to give you this. You like the Chibi Robo video? Do you want a Steam code to review our Chibi Robo inspired indie game or not?
Sure.
Great doing business with you, buddy. Hope you enjoy the game. So, I wasn't expecting this at all. I consider myself on top of my indie games, especially ones inspired by some of my favorite games. But essentially just hours after my Chibi Robo retrospective went up, these devs had already slipped in my DMs asking me to review their game, and who am I to say no to not only a free game, but one where they said it's inspired by games like Chibi Robo and Pikmin. Games I clearly enjoy a lot. You can't buy my opinion, but you can definitely appeal to my nostalgia and see how far that gets you. And these guys got pretty far, if I'm honest. This might be a weird comparison, but this game really reminded me of Canadian kids shows. This game was made in Australia, and a lot of original Canadian programming has overlap with British and Australian programming, especially considering Canada is where a lot of these cartoons are made, and other countries collaborate with Canada to make these pieces of media, a lot of which are kids-oriented. This is partially why I'm so invested in good kids media. It's what I grew up with, and is essentially part of my culture of growing up in front of a Canadian TV. I want kids to have good content. So playing this game, not only did it give me this Canadian kids show vibe visually and aesthetically, it overlapped with Pikmin's world design of an Earth that no longer has humanity on it. It starts off with an Australian narrator introducing the characters and their story, and it's just so heartwarming. It's so well done that sometimes I felt a little embarrassed that I'm 26 years old and enjoying it as if I was a kid. This is an indie game, so sometimes the animation can be a little stiff, or maybe the game can feel a little amateurish at times, but I don't mean that as a bad thing. Everyone's got to start somewhere, and people don't have infinite time or money. Sometimes this sort of thing can add to the experience, and it reminds me of, again, kids shows. And frankly, I'll take a million inspired small games by small devs like this, faults and all, especially if I get to tell them directly what I loved about it. If there's anything I want in this world, it's for small indie devs to be successful and to be able to make the art they want to make. Miscellaneous, or I'm just going to call it Misc from now on, A Tiny Tale, despite being explained to me as a game inspired by Chibi Robo and Pikmin, is a game I'd actually explain as a game that's a little bit of roughly 10 different games that released between 1996 and 2005, and I'd say these devs were outright shameless in their love for these titles. We've got Banjo and Kazooie, Super Mario Sunshine, Pikmin, Chibi Robo, and various other games, and these games' sequels. The opening cutscene is so clearly inspired by the visuals of Olimar's ship breaking apart on entry of the atmosphere, the floaty jump movement of Banjo and Kazooie, the dive from Mario Sunshine, cleaning and robot designs from Chibi Robo, the cog collection, obviously from the entire collectathon genre that this game takes heavy inspiration from, the secret levels from Sunshine. I mean, come on, dude. They literally put these weird spinning platforms in, and I genuinely loved it all. When I said that their apparent love for this stuff was shameless, that wasn't an insult. I genuinely love that they just wore their heart on their sleeves. A lot of games like to be sneaky and hide their inspirations, but it's also fun just seeing something and immediately knowing where an artist was inspired by something. So yeah, this game's a collectathon, and you can't have a collectathon without great character designs. Buddy, the protagonist, is adorable. I was sold on getting this copy once I saw the little guy. It's so clear at first glance he's designed in the same way Chibi Robo is, where despite being extremely easy to draw, he doesn't talk or express his emotion outside of movement. But he does talk and has internal dialogue in some character interactions, but he's designed in a way where he literally can't express any emotion with his face. It sort of contrasts why Buddy can talk internally but can't emote, but Chibi Robo can only speak in yes and no's, but can express extremely limited emotion in his eyes, specifically squinting or confusion. But he's adorable. I love his little goofy walk cycle and movement. Along with his clear inspiration from Chibi Robo's design, this game is separated into 8 chapters, 6 of which Buddy has a new costume in each one, which a few of you can tell right away why each costume looks the way it does, and how it ties into the chapter's plot. Even the side characters all have extremely cute designs that either are original designs that simply fit the locale, to robots made of everyday items, or robots that look like animals. And you essentially just help out most of these characters in these areas, and in collectathon fashion, you pretty much just explore the levels and get everything you can. Pretty straightforward, but the twist here is obviously some of the collection is cleaning. Picking up small garbage is just an A press, but if you want to pick up big garbage, mashing the A button to speed it up is really fun. I personally always love picking up garbage in Chibi Robo, and mashing doesn't make this game's collecting of garbage more fun or anything. It's just something I like about how this game does it. If you pick up big garbage, you have to mash for it to be faster. I honestly wish there was more really big garbage in this game than there was, if I'm honest. But with all my discussion on this game's main gameplay loop and art style and inspirations, I'm finally going to talk about the story. This game is under embargo, so I can't discuss the story from chapters 6 to 8, which is a bit of a shame, but I understand exactly why after getting there, so I won't be talking about any plot directly in any form, only vaguely. The reason it's a shame is mostly because, well, even if it wasn't under embargo, spoiling the twists of the game would kind of ruin discussing the game's plot anyways. The game's plot is about finding out why an explosion happened in the sky, and Buddy and Bagboy go on an adventure to see the world and solve a mystery. They do solve that mystery pretty early on, so the game kind of progresses past that point a little bit before the twist even occurs. Misc isn't like a deep, beautifully written masterpiece before the twist, and the plot for the most part is pretty simple kids game fare. Have some cute jokes along the way, meet interesting characters, learn some lessons, but later on, the story tries to tackle heavy subject matter in a way that kids can understand and process, even heavier than anything Chibi Robo has ever tried to cover. Which is why I believe these devs specifically reached out to me because I discussed not only Chibi Robo, but how Chibi Robo tackles an adult subject with a children's perspective, and make it easy to understand and tries to ease kids into the concept of a fact that your parents are still people, and they have disagreements and can even separate if they haven't yet. It's important that you don't shield kids from the world, especially something that can happen in their home and is relatively normal, and it doesn't change much in this game's story either. Though it's not as inherently organic as the way it's told in Chibi Robo, there's a pretty decent disconnect simply due to the fact that humans don't exactly exist anymore in this game setting. They've long gone extinct, or at least left Earth. And I'll be honest, some of those visuals in the twist had me a little emotional. It's extremely depressing to watch. Playing such a cute game with no hint of this dark turn besides subtle foreshadowing and narrator dialogue feels like a gut punch. While Chibi Robo immediately eases you into a conflict of an unstable household, Misc just suddenly hits you with a left hook, and I don't know whether it's a good or a bad thing. Visually, I love it. Execution-wise, kinda mixed on it. The best way I can describe this feeling, while also respecting the embargo hopefully, is imagine you were playing Super Mario Sunshine, and suddenly, Mario gets a phone call on his iconic trusty Shine Sprite cell phone, and over the phone, a doctor is talking and says Luigi's been in a horrible accident, please come to the hospital. But Mario, being under arrest, can't leave the island. And now, you have to continue Mario Sunshine from that plot point. It's total chibi tonal ziplash, man. Like, it's not an easy thing to do. And stick the landing without stumbling. And obviously, that's just a funny hypothetical example of how juxtaposed this game feels between chapters. It's extremely sudden, and I really commend the developers for trying to do it. But the difficulty of tackling this is definitely not lost on me after the initial shift. I think the game talks about it in a very understanding way and does it pretty well from this point on. I think those last few chapters are unironically the game's best chapters, not just in story, but gameplay too. It's very clear that the game's levels get better the further they go on. The initial level is great for tutorial reasons, then I feel like the next 2 levels are fine, but from chapter 4 and onwards, the levels just increase in quality, each better than the last if you ask me. They feel like the devs learned how to make the level better and better each time, how people would explore them and how to make things clearer to the player, as well as just making it more fun to run around them. But I feel this game would have benefited a bit by not being a collectathon, and tried to be more like Chibi Robo, specifically for its plot though. Might sound like I'm asking them to make Chibi Robo, but I simply mean making it more like Chibi Robo, on a sort of sliding scale. It could have been a collectathon, but without all the fast jumping and mobility, and was about unique and intricate ways to get around while still being small. They could have gone for a slight genre shift of gameplay after Chapter 6 too to fit what happens to your kid in a sense. The devs and people who have played the game will completely understand what I mean. Whether they agree or not, well, that's obviously up to their feelings, but I feel it was worth talking about because it could have put an emotional investment into the gameplay as well. Keeping almost the exact movement and gameplay besides not being able to hover, I was personally expecting to be gutted of my tools when the next chapter started, and that would make you feel vulnerable, like if Samus lost most of her upgrades near the end of a Metroid game. You're suddenly at the peak of movement and power, and suddenly you're just weaker. But in this case, you're not an extremely agile and mobile robot. You're grounded now, and you need to take your time getting around and find new and inventive ways to get around. But this isn't because the plot is worse off because it's a collectathon, just that I think a big reason the plot of Chibi Robo works so well is because of how slow that game is. Buddy is able to jump, glide, dive, and fall from any height without consequence. So you can move from place to place incredibly fast, and that kind of means you also don't want dialogue taking too much of your game, especially when you're a small indie studio. That's a lot of extra work. A slower paced game would have allowed for more talking and more lead up to the later chapters in a way that could have not only felt more natural, but still lined up with some of their design decisions. Garbage, for example, is incredibly hard to see sometimes, and you can just miss one small piece by accident, and being able to run, jump, and all the above allows you to get from place to place pretty reliably to retrace your steps, and if you were just a little slower, it would probably help you visually pick up on the garbage sitting right in front of you. But they already gave all garbage a sort of glowy effect for visibility, and even then, I was wandering around entire levels for nearly a half hour just looking for the last piece of garbage at like 97 or 99%. Sometimes being in places I already picked up garbage and just happened to miss the one piece. And being able to run around so quickly also makes the brushing feel a little stiff. It doesn't feel the greatest to go from your top speed to stopping on a dime to stand still and clean a spot like this. If this game's brushing also had the Chibi Robo brushing mashing, or in this game's case, the garbage pickup mashing to make it faster, and make Buddy's movement slightly faster while brushing to reposition a bit faster, it would go such a long way. The last bit of this might have seemed a bit focused on flaws I felt about this game, but the crazy thing is that's pretty much everything I felt like I could criticize about this game, and none of them are really big problems. Not including Steam achievements, some of which are non-functional on a pre-release copy, to be expected. 100%ing this game took me almost 7 hours on the dot. Some of that was just editing my settings so I could record the game well. It's not an extremely long game, so complaining that I ended up walking in circles for longer periods of time than I'd like looking for something I missed is essentially just nitpicking. The brushing being stiff and slow is nitpicking. Half of these things can be adjusted in an update or changed entirely. And even if they aren't, so what? I don't think anyone who was interested in this game draws the line at brushing the floor a little slow. At the end of the day, I really enjoyed this game. And I'm really happy the devs reached out to me, and I hope they make another game, because if they do, I'm buying the copy this time. Misc, A Tiny Tale is on Steam and Nintendo Switch July 22nd, and oops! It was delayed on Steam while writing this script to July 31st for polish reasons. I'm gonna be honest, I'm a little surprised by that because besides the game not having a proper frame rate limiter causing the game to have some frame pacing problems and this one visual bug I had when I went back to the menu, everything was extremely clean. I was actively trying to break this game for the most part because I kind of like doing that. I'm sure there's bugs I missed. Every game has got bugs, but it's cool. They're confident enough to delay the game just over a week to make sure things are even going smoother than they already are. So with all that said and done, I hope you go out and buy the game if you like any of the games that have inspired it. This game is really charming, and while it didn't scratch the exact Chibi Robo itch I'm looking for, it definitely made me happy seeing that not only it, but many of the other games I was so inspired by growing up also inspired these people. Links to the game's store pages will be in the description. Again, they are not paying me to do that. They have not exchanged any money. They only gave me the game copy, and I just want to pay it forward because, again, it was a good game. I'm really happy with it. This isn't even part of the script. I just want to say that I just enjoyed the game. It's very heartwarming, and it makes me happy to see that there are people who feel like I do, and they probably feel like you do too if you like Chibi Robo and all these other games. You did a good job, man. Oh god! Oh god, it's the Australian government! My bad accent has disgruntled them!